Hello, everybody. It is really a special pleasure for me to join you today. It is my first time to get involved with the TED community. I'm very nervous. And you are going to see also that I'm the only one not using technology. But I hope we'll be able to communicate. And thank you, Melinda. Thank you, Chris, for inviting me to join you today. Back in 2000, world leaders offered a special feat. They set up global goals, and they set in motion a whole movement of implementation plans to tackle some of the worst world's challenges: poverty, gender inequity, to end treatable and preventable diseases across the globe, and to increase also the partnerships for us to work together. Lots of promises have been made. And 10 years down the line, we are here in New York. World leaders will gather again to have the access of what we have achieved so far. First things to say is targets and goals are very important, but they're not enough. Promises made are also very important, but not enough. More important is commitment, is engaging all forces in your society to meet the goals you have established. It's important to mobilize every single citizen in every country to achieve the Millennium Goals. But also it's important that global leaders and global institutions, they walk the talk of what they have promised. I come from Africa, and everywhere when we assess the Millennium Goals, you will say Africa is the worst continent where Millennium Goals are not going to be achieved. I come here to say it would be a tragedy. It would be intolerable for all of us to get to 2015 and have to say Africa as a whole, as a continent, could not reach the Millennium Development Goals. So I'm here to propose a different approach and mindset for the next 5 years. One, there has been a tendency of all size fits all when we talk of development in the continent. No clear prioritization. So my first point is prioritization. The second point I want to raise is leadership to step up to the full responsibility to make the lives of our people change and change for better, and to lead the social change and the social movement which is required. The third thing I want to raise is social mobilization and social compacts. I'll call them compacts. Let me try to develop what I mean by this. Africa is composed of 53 countries. Some of the countries, they have a real chance of achieving Millennium Development Goals. We should then categorize those and identify clearly what needs to be done to make it possible for those countries to reach MDGs. Other countries may not be able to reach all, but they can reach something like half of MDGs. So this is a second group in which we should focus on. And of course, there will be those which will find it extremely difficult, whatever we do, to reach even half. But I want to make the point that the continent cannot be seen as a continent of failure. they are countries which have a real possibility to achieve MDGs. And it's important then to identify exactly what are the financial resources which are needed, what are the human resources needed, what is the organizational capacity which is required, and how to mobilize the rest of society so that those countries will be a shining example of how good can come from Africa too. The second group of countries, I think we need to also have a very rigorous sort of planning in which you say exactly what are the MDGs which can be achieved in which country, and what, again, are the resources which are required to get there. And we can have a huge progress in which, even if we don't achieve, at least a very significant progress would have been made. So my point is prioritization. Governments have to put resources first, they themselves, to be able to tell to donors, to multilateral organizations, what is the additional complement they need from the international community to get there. The second point I want to raise is leadership, government leadership. And for this, I'll use two examples from Africa. The first one is Malawi. In 2002, Malawi had a very severe crop failure, and it was affected by overspread famine. Around 1 million lives were lost, and the country was faced really with a very challenge of how to deal with this. So the government decided to take responsibility into its hands. They established a committee comprised of government officials, civil society organizations, including academia, donors, and international organizations. They charged this committee of collecting, analyzing rigorously the information on food production in the country. They identified spots which were critical and which were the ones which could have a major impact if something else would happen. So gathering information, having a very transparent and very clear lines of accountability in dealing with issues, this is what the government of Malawi did. In 2005, rains came, but they left early and never came back. So Malawi was again affected by another crop failure. But this time, there were no deaths, there were no overspread famine. They were able, because they had a system of provision, they were able to provide those areas which were of great vulnerability with additional support. They didn't need much of the international effort which was needed in 2002, which costed actually about $200 million. With very little effort, they were able to respond because the government had planned, they had mobilized its best capacity in terms of human capacity and institutions in the country, and it could prevent a second catastrophe. Malawi is a small country. Is not rich, but it proved that doing this could prevent. More importantly, Malawi was able to introduce very simple schemes of increasing food security. In 1 year, Malawi was exporting food to Zimbabwe. It can be done. This country, small as it is, without being oil-rich or natural resources in mineral research, without rich, was able to prove it can be done. Actually, Malawi is one of the examples also in girls' education and equity in secondary education. Melinda gave other examples in terms of maternal mortality and child mortality. The second example I want to bring is Rwanda. We all are reminded of the tragedy of genocide in Rwanda. At the end of the genocide, Rwanda had one of the lowest representation of women in public institutions. But the country recognized that if it were to climb out of the situation they had experienced before, they needed to bring all that brain power, their talent and expertise to bring women into the center stage and have processes and systems and mechanisms which would allow women to exercise fully their rights, in particular in political life. Today, Rwanda has the highest representation of parliamentarians, women parliamentarians, in the whole world. And this was done in 2 consecutive elections. Rwanda is today one of the countries which shows that when you invest in women, you have benefits and yields which translate into economy, into social change. Today, Rwanda is one of the fast-growing countries in the continent with the less rate of corruption, with education which is covering everybody. They are in the process of giving every single child, including in rural areas, a laptop to connect with the new technologies. This shows that a government which has clarity, which has a plan, which is able to be inclusive and bring all its social forces at fore, particularly to bring women at the center stage, can be a successful country. I brought these 2 examples deliberately so that it should be seen that you need to have to be extremely rich to do the right thing. You need simply to have political clarity, commitment, engage your people, bring other stakeholders, including the international ones, to contribute. This is what I think we have to do with MDGs. If we are to achieve MDGs, we need to put at the center stage women and girls. For me, these are the social groups which are going to make the major social transformation and change in our continent. In the next years to come, we need to put women and girls not as a second thought, but precisely at the center of any planning, whether it's economic, whether it's political, whether it's social, whether it's cultural, that is going to yield and bring social change. The other aspect I wanted to raise is planning. Africa needs to have clearly a plan in which goes beyond the 5-10 years. We need plans of around 30 years, understanding what to do now, what to do in 10, what to do in 20 and 30 years. Everybody seems to have a plan for our continent. You know, the US, Europe, China, Brazil, everybody has plans. I'm talking of plans which have to be generated from Africa by Africans so that we can plan the future we want for our children, for our grandchildren, in a process where we engage everybody. And finally, my point is social mobilization and social pact. You need to have not only a plan, not only priorities, not only allocation of resources, but to bring every single citizen from markets, from schools, from rural, from townships, to be clear about where we are going, what we have to achieve, what is required from every citizen, what is required from business, what is required from government, and work together for a common good. I come from a history of liberation. My youth, I was a freedom fighter. That's how we were able to wipe out colonialism in our continent. We can do it. It can be done. I challenge youth of today to build a future in which, whether you are in the south or the north, a world of prosperity, a world of equity, a world of inclusiveness in which you respect gender equity, women's empowerment, and you acknowledge that everyone has a contribution to make. Youth of our days have much better conditions than we had. With the technologies which are at our hands, with development of science, with the human and intellectual capacity which is part of our days today, progress can be made and made fast, but steadily, firmly. I challenge youth from south, from north, to work together. In Africa, we are prepared to drive our own destiny in cooperation with the rest of the community and to make sure that a future of prosperity, a future of equity, a future of development and well-being for every single human being can be part of us. And in my experience, we say, aluta continua.